Hi, I'm Dale the Insanocate. How's it going? Let me know in the comments below and hit the like button before we get started here. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm looking at my Pokemon that I have in Pokemon Home. But specifically, I've got my Hall of Fame box pulled up here. And I don't know, I just think it's fun to go back and talk about Pokemon from the past. And I would really like to know what's some of your favorite teams that you've ever built in your past Pokemon games. Heck, if you're on YouTube, make your own videos. Show me your teams. I will go check those out as well. I would love to see what past teams you've used. So basically, in my Hall of Fame boxes here, what I have are Pokemon that I have actually used in playthroughs of the game. Now, I don't really get into the whole competitive side of Pokemon, but I've always loved playing Pokemon. And, so these are various different teams I've put together over the years. And some of these go back a long time, right? This first team I have up here actually goes all the way back to Leaf Green. And I've managed to, transfer these up and hold on to them over the years. And I know Nintendo's Game Freak, they've had some very convoluted ways of being able to transfer Pokemon up. So the fact that these guys have survived through that many different transfers and are still here, and all the stories that they carry with them intact is pretty awesome. Now this is not my first team ever here. What I'm gonna go ahead and check somewhere here. This is not my first team, but it's the earliest one that I still have. Now, I've been playing since, Red and Blue version. So, obviously, there are a lot of teams that are totally missing. So, like, my first couple of playthroughs of Red and Blue version, I couldn't even tell you necessarily all the Pokemon that I used back then because I played through that game a lot. I think on my very first time attempting to play Blue version, actually, weirdly enough, my first starter actually was a Charmander. So it's cool that on this first team that I do have, Charizard is the starter for that team. And I didn't finish that playthrough. I actually ended up resetting just to try out Squirtle. And at some point, I don't remember exactly when, but I guess I did something on the PC or something. And I had saved the game, and I was like, oh, crap. Well, I guess I'm starting over with Squirtle. So by the time I finally completed Blue version, Blastoise is actually the starter that had led that team. But anyway, and back then I only really relied on my starter, and whatever the strongest Pokemon that I had caught up to that point, I just kind of kept in the team to back Blastoise up. But it was always just Blastoise, really, or just Charizard, and that's kind of how I used to play for a while. I mean, really interesting. I'm trying to think of the first time I really built a full team. I want to say it was my first playthrough of Crystal version. And obviously, Generation 1 and 2 from the original games, it's impossible to bring those teams up anyway. But there were a couple of teams from Generation 3, like my first Ruby version team, which weirdly it kind of reverted back to the just rely on the starter there with Blaziken. That Blaziken is still missing. And my first Leaf Green team. My Ruby team, my Sapphire team, and my first Leaf Green team are all totally missing. So this is the only Generation 3 team that I still have, and it is from Leaf Green. My second playthrough of Leaf Green. I've got Charizard here with Blast Burn, Dragon Claw, Inferno, and Heat Wave. Now, I'm not going to say 100% that these are all the moves that I had on those playthroughs. Some of them I can definitely remember, but some of them may have changed because of like HMs having to be dropped, and then maybe I taught it a new TM or something to fill in that spot. There's a couple where I will know that, and there are some instances where it won't. Like, I'm about 90% sure at some point or another my Charizard knew Fly, I believe. But obviously it doesn't have that here. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you which move it was that got replaced there. I'm pretty sure I actually had Blast Burn, Dragon Claw. I'm not sure on Inferno or Heat Wave though. So I couldn't tell you exactly what that moveset was back then. But anyway, Clefable was also on this team. I loved Clefable. The reason I loved Clefable is actually, I remember Clefable being an absolute tank, specifically in Pokemon Stadium, like where I used it as a rental Pokemon, and then it just not wanting to die, and being like, oh, I guess I like Clefable now. So Clefable was one that I really wanted to train in that playthrough. And so I caught a Clefairy at Mount Moon, gave it a Moonstone, and for some reason I gave it Shockwave, Fire Blast, Water Pulse as its moves. It's like, if I were to train a Clefable now, this would not be the moveset I would use. Especially now with it knowing Fairy. So at some point, I may end up actually taking this Clefable and teaching it some different moves. But these were actually the moves that I had on the playthrough of that game. Of course, Sing is in there as well. Alright, then next I've got my Hitmonchan. This was fun. Now, initially, I kind of wanted to go with, like, just all of the elemental punches. I had Ice Punch, Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, and I forgot what the fourth one that I had on there was. But then I started realizing that, Stab was a thing. Same type attack bonus, and so I taught it some fighting moves. I'm not sure exactly if I did that during the playthrough or if I did that at some point after the fact. I do remember just kind of wanting to go with like the elemental punches though. Anyway, Victory Bell was the grass type I had on that team. See, right now it's got Return, Sleep Powder, Giga Drain, and Bullet Seed. I don't know why I didn't teach it a poison move. Maybe I couldn't find a good poison TM or something that I liked that would work with Victory Bell. I'm not sure. Because I feel like there was some point around during that playthrough where I started picking up on the whole stab thing. So, anyway. Next, we have Alakazam here. This guy, I remember taking out so many Pokemon in the Elite Four with this guy, and his, being the glass cannon that he was. Psybeam, Psychic, Recover. Yeah. And Future Sight. Now, I do remember that he would be easily taken down, which is one reason I think maybe his level isn't as high as some of the others, because of him getting knocked out early on. Which they're all really close in level. So I may have trained them up a few levels after the fact. But anyway, the last Pokemon on that team was, of course, Gyarados, Surf, Bite, Hyper Beam, and Thunder. Again, this is probably not the moveset I would teach a Gyarados if I was training it now. But I had to have Surf on a Pokemon because it was, Generation 3. You had to have a Surfer. Also, if I were going to redo this team, I probably wouldn't have Charizard and Gyarados on the same team. But, I don't know. I enjoyed this team at the time. There was still a lot I had to learn about Pokemon, so this is really this is probably the only Pokemon team that I still have where I feel like I was totally ignorant while creating the team. I think it is technically the only team that I still have access to, that I was technically still a kid, I guess. Even I think I was in high school when I went through this particular playthrough, but it is the only team that I have that I still have access to, where I was not an adult when I played it. So anyway, this next team here, this is my Soul Silver playthrough. I also have to say this is not... So Soul Silver, the remakes of Heart Gold and... the remakes of Gold and Silver, they came out during Generation 4. I do have one Generation 4 team, specifically my first playthrough of Diamond version, that is lost, that I don't have anymore. And weirdly enough, a couple of these Pokemon were caught on the file that had that team on it. And I deleted that file without trading over the rest of the team. Anyway, so obviously I picked Totodile as my starter here, and then I had Rapidash. I believe I caught the Ponyta that became this Rapidash on the Pokewalker. I don't know if you remember the Pokewall. There was this little pedometer thing that came with Heart Gold and Soul Silver. You could walk around with it. You could store your Pokemon. And it was kind of, in a way, like a predecessor to Pokemon Go. And you could catch Pokemon on this little pedometer thing and then transfer them into your game and use them there. And I caught the Ponyta that would become this Rapidash on that. And I remember I actually built this team, and I had it ready to go before I even faced the first gym. I remember getting this team together in Cherry Grove. So that is the town that you first go into after leaving Newbark Town. The one that doesn't have a gym or anything in it. It's just this one little random town. You go through the first route and you're there. And I had this team fully put together at that point. I don't know why it's saying my controller's battery is low. I've got it charging. This charger is shot, I guess. Anyway, so it might do that a few more times. The next few Pokemon here, you'll notice I'll say like first met in Sinnoh region. It's because this is actually this Roserade was actually a Budew that I had caught like really early on. Like on one of the really early routes in Diamond. Same with the Staraptor and this Luxray. And I transferred them all over. They were all really low level, and I said, alright, this is going to be my team, and I was going to have the full team ready to go right out of the gate. So I had kind of a balanced team. Water, fire, grass, and poison. Normal flying, and of course electric. Now you will notice here that Luxray and Staraptor only have 3 moves. I'll get to that in just a second. It's because of the whole HM thing, so you had to delete the HMs before you could transfer them. And Staraptor had obviously see if my Feraligatr had a... No. Obviously, Staraptor had Fly, and Luxray actually had Strength, if I remember correctly. That was the HM that I had on Luxray. Now, this little guy, this is the only mythical Pokemon. And in fact, it's the only legendary either, so mythical or legendary, that I've used on any of my teams in a main playthrough. And if you pre-ordered Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they had a little giveaway at GameStop where if you pre-ordered Gold and Silver, you would get a level 5 Jirachi that you could add to either your Diamond, Pearl, or Platinum game. And I was like, it's level 5. I'm gonna trade that over into Soul Silver when I start that game up, and it's gonna be on my team. And I did it. I loved it. It's got Wish, Psychic, Last Resort, and Draco Meteor. That was one of the things that was special about that particular Jirachi, is it knew Draco Meteor, which is not a move that Jirachi is supposed to be able to learn. So obviously it still has it. And also this team, for some reason, I leveled up this Roserade to level 100. The plan, I think at one point, was actually to level up the entire team to level 100, but for some reason I stopped after getting Roserade there. But yeah, for this reason, Jirachi is actually my favorite mythical Pokemon. I love Jirachi, especially after that playthrough. That was a lot of fun. So, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever do that again or not, but having Jirachi on the team from the very beginning, from level 5, was interesting, to say the least. It was definitely a very fun Pokemon to train. So next, I have my second playthrough of Diamond team. Like I said, my first playthrough of Diamonds. That team is totally gone. And on this team, I kind of had the inspiration because it wasn't long after I finished Soul Silver that I picked up Diamond. I'm like, I want to replay Diamond version. This is actually around the time they had announced Black and White as well. And I thought, all right, so I'm gonna replay Diamond. And I thought it was fun that I had, my whole team planned out ahead of time for Soul Silver, by the very first gym. So I thought, you know what? I've got access to the GTS. I'm just going to breed 5 Pokemon that I'm going to move in. So I knew I was going to pick Turtwig as my starter because Turtwig was my favorite Generation 4 starter. In fact, Turtwig was the starter on that previous playthrough's team as well. But then I thought, what else would be fun? Why not have a second starter? So then I also bred Blaziken, because I'm like, I don't have access to my old Blaziken from Ruby anymore. That was my favorite starter from Generation 3. So why not have my favorite Generation 3 starter and my favorite Generation 4 starter on the same team? So you'll see right there, it'll say seems to have been first met in the Johto region. All of them do. Of course, so I bred a Zubat, a Magnemite, a Larvitar, a Horsey, and a Torchic, all to join the Turtwig. So I had 1 level 5 starter and then 5 level 1 Pokemon that I had just bred and traded over to train from the beginning there. And this might be my favorite team composition that I have ever made. Not just from planning. I kind of wish that I had this team on a different game, though, because I feel like the Generation 4 games were kind of weak to me personally. But I loved this team. But yeah, so yeah, Torterra, my favorite Generation 4 starter. I have Crobat, which is one of my favorite Pokemon from Generations 1 and 2, because, Zubat, Golbat, or Generation 1, Crobat being added in Gen 2 anyway. I always thought Crobat's design was awesome. And Magnezone here, which is funny because I picked Magnemite because I had always wanted to train a Magnemite. And of course, Generation 4 added in a new evolution with Magnezone, and I had always wanted to train Magnemite for 2 reasons. One, when I was growing up, we actually, they had the Season 1 anime VHSs, and one of the ones that me and my brother had when we were kids was had the episodes. the first episode on it was like where they went into a power plant and there were a bunch of like Grimer that were like clogging up the power plant and stuff, and a bunch of Magnemites showed up in there, and I think some of them evolved into Magneton. That's actually the episode where Ash caught his Muck. Anyway. At some point after that, we were eating at this like all-you-can-eat buffet restaurant that had a claw machine in the like entrance area. The name of the restaurant was Quincy's, by the way. It was in Toccoa, Georgia. And my dad was always really good at claw machines, and there was a capsule in there with a Pokemon card in it. And my dad got it. It's like, well, he knew that I was into Pokemon, so he gave it to me. And it was a Magneton card. So it was this rare Magneton card that was my dad won out of a claw machine and gave to me. I was like, that's cool, but I had never trained, and up to this point in time, this is years later. Obviously, this team I made when I was actually an adult, and I don't even the story that I'm telling here, I don't even think I was like double-digit years old yet. Maybe I was 10. Maybe I was 11 or something. I couldn't have been any older than that. Anyway, I trained up a Magnemite finally, because, this connection with this Pokemon, I had always wanted to train it. And finally I had the chance, and I put it on this team of all teams. And Larvitar, again, was another Pokemon that I always wanted to train, but I always, I'm a huge fan of dinosaurs, and it being like a T-Rex inspired thing. It's also kind of Godzilla inspired. It's green, also, but you don't get a chance to catch a Larvitar until really, really late into the game, which point it's like, what's the point? I already have my team established, so breeding a Larvitar to send over to the very beginning of this game so that I can actually have it on my playthrough team. It was a lot of fun. And at this point, Kingdra was just kind of the filler, right? And I had never trained a Horsey either, so it was like filling in this gap of, I've never trained Horsey. I needed a water type. Kingdra is also water and dragon type, and I didn't have a dragon type on the rest of the team. And the cool thing about this team is not only is it 6 Pokemon, but each of them are dual types. So I had a ridiculous amount of type coverage with this team. Like grass ground type, poison flying, electric steel, rock dark type, water dragon. That was a fun team. And of course, firefighting for Blaziken. Of course, I also have Brave Bird and Shadowclaw. That's a little strange. I think I gave it those because they were physical moves. And Blaziken's attack is slightly higher than his special attack. I'm not sure what my thinking was there, if I'm being totally honest. Anyway, I can move on now. So the next team I have here is from White version. The first Unova game, and of course, my first playthrough team here. I just decided, hey, let's play through this thing normally. Let's just catch a team along the way instead of creating one really early like I did in the past couple of generations. I thought maybe I might do a second playthrough at some point and actually create a new team, but that never ended up happening because then Black 2 and White 2 came out, so my second generation, I only did one playthrough of each game. But anyway, Superior was my starter here, Snivy. I think Snivy's definitely my favorite Generation 5 starter, just in general. Next I have Bisharp here, which was actually caught really late in the game. I remember, I think Pawniard was the last Pokemon that I caught to fill in on my team. And I specifically wanted it for its type combination. Because, you know, Dark Steel's pretty cool. I'm not sure how big of a fan I was of how he played out, though. But, anyway, then Chandelure. I loved Litwick as soon as I saw its designs. Like, that is really cool. You have this, like, haunted candle that turns into a chandelier. It's Ghost Fire. That's just an awesome combination. It's definitely one of my favorite Generation 5 Pokemon, is Chandelure. Archeops, which is, you know, one of the fossil Pokemon from Generation 5. Because I had never trained a fossil Pokemon on one of my teams before that point. It's like, why not? Let's take this region's fossil here. I do have one other fossil Pokemon on a team that I'll get to later on, but then Scolipede, because, you know, the early bugs that you could actually get in Generation 5 were actually good. Both of them. So Bug Poison right there. And then Seismitoad, I thought was an awesome Pokemon, so I caught it. Timpole, I think, is the first form's name. Anyway, my White 2 team here. I picked Oshawott as my starter for that team. Here we've got Leaveney, which... Suwaddle? Maybe? That might be the middle form. I'm blanking on its first form's name. But it was like Buggrass. It was the counterpart to... Stop with the low battery thing. It is charging. Anyway. Scolipede. Leaveney is Scolipede's counterpart. Anyway. Crocodile. That was one Pokemon that stood out to me a lot from the first playthrough that I really wanted to train. So I caught was it Sandile? And then Muck, because very similar to that story about wanting to train Magnemite. I had always wanted to train a Muck, and you had a chance. I think Muck was actually the last Pokemon that I added to that team. I think I had 5 out of the 6 already ready to go by the time I left the island in White 2. Because you start actually off on a different island than where you start off at in Black and White, in the original Black and White games. And then I've got Lucario and Ampharos. Ampharos was definitely one that was a lot of fun to train. Lucario, this is actually the second Lucario that I trained, but it's the only one that I have on a Hall of Fame team here. But I actually used the Riolu that Riley gives you on my first playthrough of Diamond. So... Anyway, I think that's all for that page. Yeah. So we're going to move on to the Hall of Fame 2 page here. So now we're going to be moving on into Generation 6, X and Y. My first playthrough of that game, I actually picked Froakie as my starter. I'll be honest, by the time weirdly enough, I actually ended up in different playthroughs training all 3 of the starter Pokemon from Generation 6. And by the time it was all over, Greninja was probably my least favorite of the three, which is odd to say. But anyway, then of course on that team, I thought the idea of having basically a fire Pidgey with Talonflame was awesome for that region's bird. So I'm like, I've got to trade that. That's actually really cool. So I picked that up right off the bat. And then this Dragonite is fun. So this Dragonite I got in a trade, a random wonder trade really early on. I got this Dragonite right here. It was actually a Dratini. I got a random level 1 Dratini, like on the first route in a wonder trade. And I'm like, that's odd. That's interesting. And actually I think you can actually see, I don't know if it'll say like the oh, see right there, it says OT Ethan. I don't know who Ethan is, but yeah. Ethan, thanks for the the Dragonite. I trained that little Dratini that I got from you, whoever you are, wherever you are, in a wonder trade, all the way up to being a Dragonite. It was on my team for that playthrough. You will notice actually that these have the markings that they were infected with Pokerus at one point. Imagine having a virus that infects everything that actually is something good, because Pokerus is a virus in the Pokemon world that does good things, not bad things. People want Pokerus. It's rare, but anyway. I don't even remember how exactly I got it, but I remember intentionally spreading it to a lot of my Pokemon. Then, of course, I caught a Routes really early on that I ended up training into this Gardevoir, which was a great Pokemon to have on that team. And this Machamp was a similar story to the Dragonite, in that I got a Machop really early on in a Wonder Trade. And then I'm like, alright, I'm going to train that on the team as well. That'd be fun to have, too. You'll notice that also has, I don't know what name that is, but it's in Japanese. Except for, there's one problem here. And I'll come back to it in just a second. So you could also get a Kanto starter, like really decently early on in X and Y. So, of course, I wasn't going to pass up that chance, and you could Mega Evolve it. Now, I already knew that I had the Charizard from my Leaf Green team, so I'm like, I don't want to train out a second Charizard. And I've already had the Fletchinder, or I don't remember what stage it was at that point of the game. Fletchling? I know it's Talonflame now, but so I picked Bulbasaur, because I couldn't pick Squirtle because I had already picked Froakie as my other starter. So Bulbasaur just made the most sense to take at that point. Plus, Venusaur's a really solid grass type to bring. Anyway, I'll go back to this Machamp here. I ran into a problem when I realized I needed to trade to get the Machamp to evolve, and it was late at night. This is a point in time when I was actually working third shift, and I was always tired when I was working that job, right? And I wasn't thinking clearly, and I thought maybe I could get some random person to trade with me so I can evolve my Machoke into a Machamp. and some random person traded me their Garbodor for my Machoke. And I was trying to get them to trade it back to me. And then they disconnected. And I never heard from them again. So the Machoke that I played through most of the game with was gone. It's just gone. And there's part of me that just wanted to quit the game right there. Because of how stupid I was. But no, I decided to find another Machoke from somebody else to trade it, and I would just pretend it was the same one. Of course, that doesn't work. It really doesn't. You're always going to remember what happened. The moveset is different than the one that I had traded before. And yeah, this is not the Pokemon that I started off with really early on, but it is the Machamp that I had on my team at the time of actually completing the game. But yeah, there's that story. So that is one of my more embarrassing moments in Pokemon right there. Anyway, I can move on now to my Alpha Sapphire team, and after having a few rounds of let me just kind of figure out my team as I go, this was the first team I went back to the whole idea of let me pick out my team before I even start the game. And this is a great team right here. So I bred up. So first of all, I picked Mudkip as my starter for this team because I already had Blaziken, even though Torchic was my favorite Generation 3 starter. I wanted to train something different, so I went with Mudkip for this team. And of course, I bred up for the team. I also had Munchlax. Actually, I think Munchlax was the last Pokemon that I picked for this team. If I remember right, if I remember correctly, I sat down and actually tried to figure out a way to have type coverage versus every single type in the game. I don't remember if I technically pulled that off or not, but I remember getting Togepi, Dino, Aron, and a Chespin, all bred and ready to go, all to trade into that game at level 1. And I'm pretty sure that that's type coverage on everything. So I'm like, well, I've got one more slot left. What am I going to fill it with? And I had never really trained a Snorlax before, so you know what? I bred up a Munchlax as well and traded that over with everything else. And I created what is probably my second favorite team as far as team makeup here. Second only to that Diamond team that I was on earlier. This team was a lot of fun to play through the game with. And yeah. Like, I mean, look at this Togekiss. I remember at one point, I don't remember if it was because of the experience share or what, but this Togekiss ended up just like blowing everybody away in terms of experience points. And it ended up at level 95 by the time I finished the game in the Delta episode and everything. So anyway, I can move on here. This is my second playthrough of X because at this point in time, Pokemon Bank was a thing. So I transferred everything into Pokemon Bank off of, not X, of Y. I never had X version, I had Y version. This time around, because you know I had already trained Chespin here on this team, and I had Froakie for my first team. So the only remaining Pokemon at this point in time from Generation 6 that I had not trained was Finnegan. So that was my starter, obviously de facto for that team. And as it turns out, Finnegan into Delphox ended up being my favorite starter out of all three of them. Weirdly, I've never had that happen before where I picked the one that I thought looked the most interesting first because, you know, frogs. I have a little bit of a weird connection with frogs just because of where I'm from. I like frogs. So it was Ninja Frog. Alright, that was an obvious first choice. But then I actually had more fun with Chespin into Chestnut and Finnegan into Delphox than I did with Froakie. Weird how that works out. I thought Delphox was an awesome Pokemon. And those that say that they prefer its second form, I can't even tell you the name of it off the top of my head. I think they're just wrong. I think Delphox is the best version of it. I mean, look, it's using a flaming stick as a wand. As a magic wand, basically. I just think that's awesome. And the rest of this team were mostly Pokemon that I had never trained before. That I had always just really wanted to train. And I don't know that I spent the same amount of time planning out type coverage with this team that I had other teams in the past. Like I did with this team. But I did... Like, you will notice most of these were bred up and traded over ahead of time. So it's weird. I think I bred this Tyrantrum on my first profile for Y version and then traded the baby into home to bring back in for my second playthrough of Y. Because, you know, Dinosaur, T-Rex, I thought Tyrantrum was awesome. Had to have that on the team. Same with Pangoro, Panda Bear, Fighting type, just awesome Pokemon. Abomasnow, this one, it had to have been like really, really low level for me to have moved it into this team. Oh, stop doing that. It's weird that it says Johto region, so that's odd. I don't remember. I probably bred this at some point on Soul Silver for something. Probably. Because my guess is that I had them all at level 1, or at least really early level. And then this Fearow, I believe I bred on my Alpha Sapphire. Then traded it over into home to use on this team as well. So, yeah, Fearow, Abomasnow, Pangoro, and Tyrantrum. Now, of course, at this point, for my Kanto starter, because of the same thing, you know, getting a Kanto starter from that region's professor, I ended up picking Blastoise because Squirtle was the only one left that I didn't have trained from a previous Hall of Fame team, which is interesting considering I did say in the beginning of this video that Blastoise was the starter from my first team that I ended up beating Blue version with, and it ended up being the last Kanto starter that I actually trained up on a team that I still have. But moving on, then of course into Sun and Moon Generation 7. My brain's starting to get a little bit scrambled here. So of course I had to pick Rowlet. Like, Rowlet was definitely the Pokemon that stood out the most to me by far of the Alolan starters and Ghost Grass type. I don't know how you couldn't love that. This is definitely probably the most beloved starter line of that generation, and with just good reason, in my opinion. I loved this guy. And this time I ended up picking my team as I went, but I wanted to have the whole team together really early on anyway. So the whole team for this team were all Pokemon other than my starter that you could catch on the first island in Sun and Moon. So I ended up catching a Growlithe that became an Arcanine later. I am blanking on Hariyama's first form. Makuhita? Yeah, that's right. Which would actually really make sense to have been in a Hawaiian-based game. But anyway, that was also available on the first island. Alolan Muck here. This is the first instance of a second time using a Pokemon on a Hall of Fame team. This has happened twice now that I'll show you a little bit later. But in this case, I don't necessarily know that it technically counts because it's a different version. Because it was an Alolan Grimer, not a normal Grimer that I caught. Because I thought that was interesting. Plus, I wanted to have at least one Alolan variant on the team. And, of course, Vikavolt. I thought the Grubbin was an awesome, early route bug Pokemon. And this was a just killer design for an electric bug type. Of course, Slowpoke as well, because even since Generation 1, Slowbro has always been one of those Pokemon that I had wanted to train, but just had never done it. So, Slowbro is here as well. So yeah, that was my team for my first playthrough of Sun, and of course, my second playthrough of Sun, I moved everything, into Pokemon Bank. I started over, and this time, I actually did plan out the team from the start. You'll notice that this team is a little bit lower level. I don't think I played as long into the post game with this team as I did the previous one. Just because I kind of got a little bit tired of the game. I do feel like Sun and Moon were probably the weakest generation, in my opinion, but I did play through the game twice, so that is what it is, I guess. I picked Litten for my starter on this playthrough, and this team I actually did plan out in advance. I bred up all the Pokemon I would use on this team on my initial profile for Sun before I started over, and I, of course, used Home to transfer everything over and then back into the game once I had restarted. And on this team, I had an Alolan Ninetales. I had never trained a Ninetales before this, so the first time I did was actually with the Alolan version. I've got to say, personally, I prefer the Alolan version of Ninetales over the original. That's just me, but I feel like a lot of people are going to agree with me there. The Alolan version of Vulpix is adorable, and Ninetales is just kind of awesome. So then I had Nidoking, which I thought was a great poison ground type to have on the team. Plus, I had never really trained one before. Not really. I had one of my earlier playthroughs of Red and Blue version. I kind of trained up a Nidoking and a Nidoking Queen, actually both, but I had never really used one on a team before this, so. Then I got Komodo, that version's pseudo-legendary. Basically its version of Dragonite. I thought that was an awesome combination, dragon fighting. Golisopod, from Wimpod. Wimpod's actually really hard to train. Wimpod was really annoying to train really early on, but it's kind of like training a Magikarp, except for instead of it not learning moves, it's just had this thing where it always wants to run away if it gets damaged or scared, which makes training a Wimpod really interesting. But anyway, for my secondary starter on this team, I ended up picking Trico because it was the only Generation 3 Pokemon. And I remember this is at a point where I'm like, alright, at some point I want every single starter Pokemon on one of these Hall of Fame teams. And I started looking at what I have left and the types, and it's like, alright, well, at one point I had future teams planned out for like who I was going to pair up with potential, even non-existent starters at the point, like just theoretical, like for Sword and Shield, before I even know what those teams were, before knowing the whole regional dex thing wouldn't be a thing, which kind of upset me a little bit because it kind of took those plans that I had and threw them all out. But anyway, so yeah, weirdly enough, so that was the last team I had trained before Sword and Shield. And all of these teams, with the exception of this last team for my second playthrough of Sun and Moon, have at least one Pokemon on them that disqualify them from being able to be transferred into Sword and Shield. And some of them, it might only be one Pokemon. But all of them have at least one, with the exception of that one of my second playthrough of Sun. That is the only team that I could transfer in full into Sword and Shield. As of right now, I do kind of think that they will at some point add the rest of them in, because I'd love to, go through and just beat the league championship with like all of my past teams, one by one. But anyway, Hall of Fame 3. Before I get into these guys up here at the top, I'm going to point out this little ditto here, right? So, you'll see here, first met in the Johto region. I caught this guy on, I can't remember the number on the route. It's the one right after you come out of Ilex Forest. The route where the daycare is in Gold and Silver version. So, in my first playthrough of Soul Silver, I caught this guy. And this is the ditto that I have used for breeding purposes ever since. I have maybe used this thing in battle like one time ever. And it is level 85. I'm not sure where exactly it's getting its EXP from, but this guy has a lot of children. This thing is both several Pokemon, both in a lot of my teams, as well as Pokemon that I've traded out in the world. This thing is some of their fathers. This thing is also some of their mothers, depending on what it was paired up with. But yeah, Ditto's a little strange like that. It can go either way, but this little Ditto, it's got a lot of children. And I mean a lot of children. Anyway. So, moving on here. For Sword and Shield, my initial team here, because something really interesting happened, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Of course, I picked Grookey as my starter. And for this game, I ended up deciding to get my team together, I think, when I hit the wild area. So a couple of these I may have caught before that. I think I caught Choodle before I got to the wild area. That became this Dreadnought here. But then the rest of them... No, I also caught the Zigzagoon here that became Obstagoon. I caught that early on. Like in the first route. So got those guys. Everything else here. So, the Joltik, the Vanillite that became this Vanillux, and, of course, the, I can't think of Claydolls. Baltoy was the initial version of Claydol. So I caught those all out in the wild area, and I put together this team. So, Dreadnought I just thought was a cool new Pokemon, rock, water type, and I thought, Galerion Zigzagoon was awesome. This Pokemon based on Kiss, like, come on. This third form that the, initial Hoenn version of Zigzagoon didn't have, that was fun. So I trained this guy up as well. And Joltik was one that I had always wanted to train ever since Generation 5. So, this was... Same with... Vanillix is funny because I know that people give its line crap for being one of the, like, designs that, like, they were low on inspiration. But I think it's kind of cool. I kind of like the idea of an ice cream cone Pokemon. Like, why not? Claydol's a little bit goofy as well. But that's, a Generation 3 Pokemon. So I think this is a fun team. Maybe not the strongest team ever. It did kind of struggle a little bit, but I like this team. And anyway, I was playing through the game, and I think it was like around level 40-something by the time I decided I was going to actually go back and start the DLC. Because I stopped playing this game for like a year and a half because something personal happened in my life, and I couldn't go back to the game. So I just kind of dropped it where it was at. And when I finally came back, I noticed that if you had not beat the league yet, if you had not beat the champion yet, the Isle of Armor area would start off at level 10, basically. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to bring in these like level 40 overpowered Pokemon for that area. Let me catch some new ones, start a whole second team, plus, with all the raids and stuff, it's really... And the way the EXP share in this game is kind of broken, it's like it won't be too difficult to train up a second team. So I ended up obviously thinking, alright, well, the whole Isle of Armor thing is based around Kubfu, so I'm going to get Kubfu. I ended up picking the dark, the single strike path for Urshifu here. I caught a Rookie D to add to this team. I had a Volcarona in Pokemon Home that I ended up spending a ton of time. Like, my 3DS did not want to connect to the internet just so I could transfer everything into Home and get everything out of bank and stuff and move it up. I caught a Ponyta, bred one so that I could get a level 1 Ponyta. Because you don't get to catch the Galerion Ponyta until really later on. I did say that there was another instance of a Pokemon that I had trained twice. This is it. Galerion, the Galerion version of Rapidash, because, I did have, back on my Soul Silver team, I have the normal Cantonian Rapidash. Anyway. So that was on the team. I know there's like one point where they give you a Toxel at level 1. It's like, you know what, let's just throw that on the team. On this new secondary team. Plus, honestly, Baby Toxel is absolutely adorable. And when it evolves to the Toxtricity, like the whole guitarist thing that it has going for it, it's pretty awesome. The animations are fantastic. I love this guy. And then I get an Axew that I bred and then threw that on the team as well to round out the 6 for the secondary team. And by the time I completed the DLC, ran through the wild area a couple times, did some raids. Basically, this secondary team was only just a few levels below my primary team. So then I just kind of started training all 12 of them together and just like, basically just shuffling them in and out. And for like some of the last few gyms, it was actually kind of fun to be able to strategize around which Pokemon I was going to bring into a gym, having 12 Pokemon to choose from instead of just 6. I could move the Pokemon around between these 12 to, better match up against the gyms. So that was actually fun. I actually really dig the ability to train 6 Pokemon instead of just, 12 Pokemon instead of just 6 for your team. So now these guys are all in the 70s. I've completed the main story, and I still have content to go through with, the Isle of Armor. Or not the Isle of Armor, the Crown Tundra. So these guys will be even a higher level before it's all said and done. And I don't know, I think that's pretty awesome. I do think I would have a stronger connection with some of these Pokemon if I actually trained them up through battles more so than just giving them experience candy gained through raids and stuff. But, and of course, just having a couple of them where I only use them on occasion. Some of them don't get used as often, and just kind of sit in the party and soak up experience from the EXP share. So I think that does kind of hurt your connection with certain Pokemon. Whereas to actually have to actively use them in battle to train them. I would kind of hope that maybe in some future Pokemon game that they could fix that somehow. What I would actually like to see is just have a wild area, but instead of having raid dens, have randomly generated trainers that would appear periodically, and every day they would shuffle in new trainers. So you would have different classes, like the hiker class or the fisherman class, and they would have a certain set pool of Pokemon that could generate in their parties. A hiker would have a Machop, or fighting and rock type Pokemon, or fishermen would have different water type Pokemon that could randomly generate for their team. I think something like that would be more interesting as far as building a connection with your Pokemon. But I did like that through the DLC and the way the wild area works, that the game actually does kind of offer enough content that I was able to, in a main playthrough, train, instead of just 6 Pokemon, 12. I thought that was actually really cool. I really love that fact of it. So even though I feel like it could have been, the way it was done could have maybe been done better, I still dig the fact that I was able to at all, because being able to train more than 6 Pokemon is something I've always wanted to do in one of the main Pokemon games. But anyway, that's all I've got here. I know that was kind of rambly, but hey, there's a lot of stories here. And you know what? Like I said, I would love to hear your story. So share in the comments what some of your favorite teams have been over the years, or make your own videos and tag me in them or post the links below. Just let me know and I will check those out. And I'd love to hear your past team Pokemon stories, what you've done in your playthroughs. Maybe you've been more of a competitive player. Let me know about that stuff. I would actually dig to hear about some of that. So let me know. And of course, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and go check out the All the Gaming podcast. The podcast is all about the discussion of video games and other gaming topics. And head on over to Insanocate at Twitch TV. I'm going to be starting streaming there pretty soon. I might do some more streams here on YouTube before I get ready to make the jump. But mark the date on your calendar. That's right, June 11th. It's going to be an interesting day, and I hope to see you all there. Of course, remember to turn on the light and open the door, because you can't have sanity without at least a little insanity, and I will see ya next time.